Hey there, welcome back. Today we're going to dive into the world of AI. And we've got two really interesting sources to kind of unpack and compare. On one hand, we have Governing AI,
Hmm.
a blueprint for the future from Microsoft. It's a pretty comprehensive look at, well, how we might actually try to govern this rapidly evolving technology, right? And then to contrast that, we're going to look at an article from Edutopia called Using AI to Save Time and Reduce the Workload When Writing IEPs. It's much more specific, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating juxtaposition, isn't it? On one hand, you have these huge ideas about regulating these powerful AI systems that can have these global impacts. And then on the other hand, we see AI being used in very practical ways, like helping teachers with what can be a really overwhelming process, creating those individualized education programs, IEPs. Totally, yeah. It really highlights how AI is already influencing things, both like on this global scale and then also on a very personal level. But before we get into the specifics, I think it's important to just step back for a second and really try to grasp the sheer scale of what we're dealing with here. The Microsoft document even starts by comparing AI's potential impact to that of the printing press, which is, one of those inventions that totally reshapes society as we know it.
Right. And they actually drive that point home with a really interesting visual. They have a graph that shows the exponential growth of human prosperity
Mhm.
since the printing press.
And
And
it's
I don't know, it really makes you think, right? Like, what could that same kind of trajectory look like with AI?
Yeah, it is pretty exciting, but also a little bit intimidating, to be honest, right?
Right.
We've already seen how technology can have some unintended consequences. I mean, even the document brings up social media as an example of this. Like, remember back in the day when it was all about just connecting with friends and sharing ideas? Now it's just a whole different landscape.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely changed.
Sometimes for better, sometimes, for worse.
Makes you wonder how your view of social media has changed over the years, like has become more complicated for you, more cautious.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, tons of food for thought there. And I think that's really what Microsoft is getting at here. Like this core idea that we need to be thinking very carefully about how we develop and actually deploy AI. So, to address that, they've laid out this 5-point blueprint for how we might govern AI.
Right. And it all starts with them advocating for these government-led AI safety frameworks. So essentially like clear rules of the road,
Yeah.
building on the work that's already been done by organizations like NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Okay, so we're talking standards, guidelines,
Yeah.
but then they take it a step further with the safety brake concept, right?
Well, yeah, it's a pretty intriguing idea. They argue that AI systems that are controlling, critical infrastructure, so things like power grids, transportation systems, maybe even things like financial markets, right? They argue that these systems should be required to have these safety brakes that would actually allow for human intervention, especially in emergencies.
So almost like a big red button that someone can hit if things start to go haywire.
Yeah, in a sense, they use the analogy of emergency brakes on a school bus. We trust technology to safely transport our kids to school every day, but there's always that backup system in place just in case something goes wrong. It makes you wonder, though, right? How would you actually design these safety brakes
Hmm.
for these really complex AI systems? And then also, who would have the authority to actually use them?
It's definitely complicated. And then their blueprint gets even more abstract with this idea of a legal framework that mirrors AI's technology.
Yeah, so they're basically saying that our laws need to evolve, right? They need to keep pace with how AI is actually built and how it works. Just imagine trying to regulate the internet with laws written before it even existed.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't be very effective.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So it sounds like they're calling for a pretty fundamental shift in how we think about AI from a legal perspective.
Absolutely, yeah. And then there's also this emphasis on transparency and access for researchers.
Hmm.
They argue that open access to AI research is just like absolutely crucial for fostering collaboration, accelerating progress, and making sure that the benefits of AI are shared widely.
But wouldn't that also make it easier for, malicious actors to get their hands on potentially dangerous AI technology?
Yeah, that's a very valid concern, and I think it's a question that needs to be carefully considered. It's a delicate balancing act, right? Like, how do we promote open access to AI research while also safeguarding against misuse?
That's a great question. It seems like so much of this just comes down to finding the right balance between fostering innovation while also prioritizing safety.
Exactly. And finally, Microsoft emphasizes the importance of these public-private partnerships. They really believe that governments, companies, and civil society organizations need to work together to address the societal challenges that are posed by AI.
So it sounds like they're calling for a pretty collaborative approach.
Yeah, they are. And they highlight examples like the Christchurch call,
Yeah.
which was that global effort to try to prevent the spread of terrorist content online, and also the way the tech industry has come together to support Ukraine. They point to those as examples of what's possible when we actually work together.
So it sounds like the key takeaways here are big picture thinking, collaboration, safety breaks. It's clear that Microsoft is taking the potential impact of AI very, very seriously.
Yeah, they are. But I think now is a good time to zoom in on one specific aspect of their blueprint that I thought was really interesting. Their proposal for a brand new government agency that would be focused solely on licensing these high-capability AI models.
Licensing AI models, what would that even look like?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Just imagine a world where companies are developing, these really powerful AI models. I'm talking about the ones that could have a significant impact on society, right? Imagine that they would actually need to obtain a license
Yeah.
from this agency before they could even start development.
So almost like getting a license to operate a nuclear power plant or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's basically acknowledging the potential power
Hmm.
and the potential risks, obviously, that are associated with these really advanced AI systems.
So they'd be assessing things like the intended use of the AI, the potential impact, and of course the safety measures that are in place, right?
Precisely. And they also talk about these things called licensed AI data centers. These would be like specialized facilities that meet all these really strict security and safety standards.
Yeah.
That's where these powerful AI models could be developed and deployed.
It's like adding another layer of control to the whole process. But how would they even go about determining which AI models are, powerful enough to actually require a license in the first place?
Well, that's a really crucial question, and they suggest a couple of different approaches. Like one is looking at how much computing power is actually used to train the AI model.
Hmm.
So basically, the more power required, the more capable that model is likely to be. But they also acknowledge that, this might not be a perfect measure, especially as AI technology just keeps evolving at such a rapid pace.
Right. So what else would they consider then?
Well, they also suggest looking at the specific capabilities of the AI model. Like, can it perform tasks that could pose a significant risk to safety or security? Does it exhibit behaviors that we don't fully understand or that we can't predict?
So it's not just about raw power, it's also about what that power could potentially be used for.
Exactly. And then there's this KY3C principle that they introduce, which stands for Know Your Cloud, Customer, and Content. All about transparency and accountability. So first you have Know Your Cloud,
Hmm.
which means like understanding where your AI models are being developed and deployed. Are they in those licensed AI data centers that meet the safety standards? Are there any vulnerabilities in the cloud infrastructure?
And then know your customer is about really making sure that the AI isn't ending up in the wrong hands,
Right.
like that it's being used responsibly.
You got it. And finally, there's Know Your Content, which focuses on being able to actually identify AI-generated content. So this could involve developing tools that can detect certain patterns or artifacts that AI systems might leave behind, or even requiring companies to label content that was generated by AI.
So almost like putting a made in China label on a product, right? So you know where it came from and can make a more informed decision about it. Oh.
Oh, that's a great analogy. And, as AI gets more and more sophisticated, being able to tell the difference between human-created content and AI-generated content is going to be so crucial,
Hmm.
especially with things like deepfakes and all the misinformation we see online. I mean, just imagine if every news article or social media post could potentially be fake.
Yeah.
We really need ways to be able to know what's real.
It all circles back to this idea of responsibility, doesn't it? And it's
Yeah.
not just about the companies developing the AI, it's about us as individuals too. Like, how do we use these tools responsibly? How do we stay informed? How do we critically evaluate all the information we see?
Those are big questions. But I think for now, maybe we can shift gears a bit and look at how these, grand ideas about AI governance are actually playing out in a very specific setting, the
Sure.
classroom. Do you remember that Edutopia article we mentioned earlier?
The one about AI helping teachers with IEPs. Yeah, I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Okay, let's dive in. The article starts by highlighting how challenging and time-consuming IEPs can be for teachers. They're already juggling so many different responsibilities, and IEPs can be incredibly detailed and complex, and the process of creating them can take teachers away from actually spending time with their students, which is, not ideal.
That's where AI comes in, right? They talk about this tool called Magic School AI that's specifically designed to make the process easier.
Exactly. It acts as a sort of thought partner, helping teachers simplify the IEP draft creation. It can even focus on specific sections like describing the student's current performance or setting goals. But the key here is that it's not meant to actually replace the teacher's expertise.
It's a tool, not a replacement. I like that.
Yeah. The final decisions and the personalization of the IEP, that still rests with the teacher and the educational team, of course. It's about finding that balance between leveraging the efficiency of AI and maintaining the human touch, which is just so important in education.
And speaking of balance, the Edutopia article also brings in Microsoft's perspective on responsible AI development here. They really emphasize that it's not just about the tools themselves, but it's also about the culture within the company,
Yeah.
Like ethical considerations need to be embedded into every role, from the developers coding the algorithms to the executives making decisions about how AI is used.
Yeah, and they have a lot of initiatives in this area. They have something called responsible AI champions within the company. And they even have tools like the Responsible AI dashboard that's built into their Azure machine learning platform. They seem to be really pushing this idea of a socio-technical perspective, recognizing that AI is not just about technology, but it's also about people and society.
It makes you wonder what kind of ripple effect this could have on, like, the future of AI development as a whole. If more companies actually follow this kind of path, could it lead to a more ethical and responsible approach to AI across the board?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think what's really interesting here is that we're seeing these themes of responsibility and ethical development at both ends of the spectrum.
Right.
On the one hand, you have Microsoft talking about these huge ideas, like licensing powerful AI models and establishing safety breaks for critical infrastructure. But on the other hand, you also have this very specific example of AI being used in the classroom to help teachers with IEPs.
It's a good reminder that AI isn't just some like abstract concept. It's already impacting our lives in very, very real ways. But I think the main takeaway for me is that we as individuals have a responsibility to stay informed and stay engaged. AI is evolving so rapidly, and it's really up to all of us to shape its future. What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I think we need to keep asking those tough questions like, what does responsible AI actually look like? What are the potential risks and benefits? And how can we ensure that AI is used to benefit humanity as a whole?
Those are definitely questions worth pondering. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this first part of our deep dive into the world of AI.
Yeah, stay tuned for part 2, where we'll go even deeper into some of these challenges and opportunities that AI presents, and we'll explore how we can navigate this rapidly evolving landscape.
As we were talking about those licensed AI data centers in the last part, it really got me thinking about the sheer scale of the computing power we're talking about here.
Oh, it's mind-boggling, right? I mean, these AI models are already incredibly complex, and they're only going to get more so.
Yeah.
How do we even begin to wrap our heads around the infrastructure needed to support all of that?
Well, I think that's why this concept of these like specialized data centers is so intriguing. They're not just your typical server farms, right? They're designed from the ground up to meet the unique demands of these really advanced AI models with things like specialized hardware, advanced cooling systems, and really robust security measures.
So it's not just about having a lot of computers. It's about having the right kind of computers and the right environment to support them. Exactly. And it's not even just about the physical infrastructure. It's also about the expertise that's needed to manage these systems, the software tools that are used to develop and deploy the AI models, and of course, all those ethical considerations that need to be woven into every aspect of the process.
It sounds like a massive undertaking, but then you layer on this idea of licensing the AI models themselves. That still seems a bit fuzzy to me. How would that even work in practice?
Okay, so let's say you're a company developing a really cutting-edge AI model, something with the potential to revolutionize healthcare or transportation, for example. Under this proposed system, you'd need to go through this really rigorous licensing process with this new government agency.
So it's not just about building a cool AI. You have to prove that you're doing it responsibly and that you've considered the potential impact it could have on society.
Exactly. It's about ensuring that these powerful AI models are developed and deployed with appropriate safeguards in place. And the licensing process wouldn't be a one-time thing either. This agency would likely be involved in ongoing monitoring and collaboration. So it's kind of like a continuous safety check to ensure that the AI models are being used as intended and that any potential risks are being addressed.
It sounds like a pretty significant shift in how we approach AI development, but then there's also this whole know your cloud, customer, and content principle. Still trying to wrap my head around all three parts of that.
I know it can feel like a lot,
Hmm.
but it's all about promoting transparency and accountability.
Yep.
So Know Your Cloud is about understanding where your AI models are actually being developed and deployed. Are they in those secure, licensed data centers? Are there any vulnerabilities or risks associated with the cloud infrastructure itself?
Okay, so that makes sense. And know your customer is about making sure the AI isn't falling into the wrong hands. Right.
Exactly. It's about scrutinizing who has access to these powerful AI models and for what purposes. Are they being used responsibly? Are there any red flags that suggest potential misuse or abuse?
It makes me think about those deepfakes we talked about earlier. Those AI-generated videos that can make it seem like someone is saying or doing something they never actually did.
Oh, yeah, that's a prime example of why know your customer is so important. Imagine someone using a powerful AI model to create deepfakes for malicious purposes, like spreading misinformation or damaging someone's reputation.
It's a scary thought, for sure. But the third part of KY3C, Know Your Content, aims to address that, right?
Yes, it's about being able to identify AI-generated content, whether it's text, images, audio, or video. This could involve developing really sophisticated tools to detect those subtle patterns or artifacts that AI systems might leave behind, or even requiring companies to label their AI-generated content, kind of like a digital watermark.
It's like, knowing whether the news article you're reading was actually written by a human journalist or if it was generated by some AI.
Exactly. As AI gets more sophisticated, this ability to distinguish between human-created content and AI-generated content is going to be crucial. It's about empowering people to navigate this, evolving AI landscape with awareness and critical thinking.
It all ties back to this idea of responsible AI development, doesn't it? But before we move on from this, I wanted to touch on something else that Microsoft mentions in their blueprint. The importance of ensuring that academic researchers and nonprofit organizations have access to the resources they need to engage with AI. I mean, developing these advanced AI models can be incredibly expensive, right?
Oh, absolutely. It requires massive amounts of computing power, data, and expertise.
Hmm.
And if we're not careful, we could end up in a situation where only huge corporations and governments have the resources to play in this space, which would obviously stifle innovation and limit our understanding of AI as a whole.
And it could also exacerbate existing inequalities, right? Like, if access to AI is concentrated in the hands of a select few, it could further disadvantage those who are already marginalized.
That's a crucial point. We need diverse voices and perspectives involved in AI development and deployment to ensure that it benefits all of humanity, not just a select few. And Microsoft acknowledges this in their blueprint. They talk about supporting initiatives like the proposed National AI Research Resource, which would provide computing resources and support for academic researchers.
And they also mention expanding their own programs to provide researchers outside of Microsoft with access to their AI models and tools.
It's about democratizing access to AI, enabling a wider range of researchers and organizations to explore its potential, contribute to the field, and hold the larger players accountable. And it's not even just about providing access to the computing resources, right? It's also about fostering collaboration, sharing knowledge, and creating a more inclusive AI ecosystem.
So it's not just about building bigger and better AI models, it's about building a more equitable and inclusive AI ecosystem.
Exactly. And speaking of working together, let's talk about the final piece of Microsoft's blueprint,
Yeah.
their call for public-private partnerships to address the societal challenges posed by AI. It's clear they believe we need a more collaborative approach, bringing together governments, companies, and civil society organizations.
And they point to some pretty inspiring examples, like the Christchurch call and the tech industry's response to the war in Ukraine, as evidence that collective action can make a real difference.
Yeah, those examples really highlight the power of collaboration. The Christchurch call brought together governments and tech companies from all over the world to develop concrete measures to prevent the spread of terrorist content online. And we've seen how the tech industry has stepped up to support Ukraine, from providing cybersecurity assistance to helping refugees.
It's a good reminder that technology can be a powerful force for good, but it requires collaboration and a shared sense of purpose.
And that's what Microsoft is calling for when it comes to AI. They argue that we need a similar collaborative approach to address the challenges posed by AI, from protecting democracy to ensuring that AI is used ethically and responsibly.
So it's not just about companies or governments acting in isolation. It's about working together to create a future where AI benefits all of humanity.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the Edutopia article and that specific example of AI being used in the classroom to help teachers with IEPs.
It's fascinating to think about how these grand ideas about AI governance and ethical development actually translate to a real-world setting like a school.
The article really emphasizes that AI tools like Magic School AI should be used as thought partners to support educators, not to replace their expertise or judgment. It's about finding that sweet spot where AI can help streamline tasks and free up teachers' time, allowing them to focus more on those human aspects of education.
Like building relationships with students, providing individualized support, and fostering a love of learning.
Exactly. And the article also highlights the importance of training educators on the ethical use of AI, ensuring that they understand the limitations of these tools and how to use them responsibly. It's not just about giving teachers a shiny new tool, it's about empowering them to use it effectively and ethically.
It's about creating a culture of responsible AI use within schools, where AI is integrated in a way that benefits both students and educators.
Precisely. And it's not even just about the tools themselves. It's also about establishing clear guidelines for data privacy and security, ensuring that student data is protected and used responsibly.
Those are crucial considerations, especially in an educational setting. We need to make sure that AI is being used to enhance education, not to undermine it or exploit student data.
Absolutely. And I think what's really interesting here is that we're seeing these same themes of responsibility, ethics, and human-centered design emerging across all these different sectors,
Yeah.
from global AI governance to the very specific use of AI in the classroom.
It suggests that there's a growing awareness of the importance of approaching AI with care and foresight.
It is encouraging to see, but we can't become complacent, right? We need to keep asking those tough questions, pushing for greater transparency and accountability, and advocating for policies and practices that ensure AI is used for good.
It's a continuous process, but
Really?
I think what's most important is that we're actually having these conversations, engaging with these issues, and actively shaping the future of AI.
I couldn't agree more. And that's something we can all do, regardless of our technical expertise or background.
Right. We can stay informed, participate in public dialogues, and support organizations that are working to promote responsible AI development. It's about recognizing that the future of AI isn't predetermined. It's something that we can all influence.
And as we continue this exploration of I think maybe it's time to shift our focus to the human element. What does it actually mean to live in a world that is increasingly shaped by AI? What are the potential social, cultural, and ethical implications?
Those are huge questions, and ones that we'll definitely delve into in the next part of our deep dive.
It's interesting, right? Like, as we were talking about those licensed AI data centers, it really got me thinking about how intertwined AI already is with our everyday lives.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We've been talking about these huge, complex systems, but AI is also present in so many of the things we use and interact with every single day. I mean, everything from the recommendations we get on streaming services to the way our social media feeds are curated.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to forget that AI is already kind of working behind the scenes, shaping our experiences and influencing the decisions we make, often in very subtle ways. And as AI gets even more sophisticated, it's only going to become more and more pervasive.
It really does feel like we're at this kind of pivotal moment. And so much of what we've been discussing today seems to hinge on this idea of responsible AI development, right? Like
Yeah,
making sure that these systems are designed and used in a way that actually aligns with human values,
yeah,
and that they ultimately benefit society as a whole.
yeah, for sure. It's not just about making sure that AI is safe in this like technical sense, like preventing it from malfunctioning or causing harm. It's about making sure that AI is used in a way that promotes fairness and justice and well-being, all of those things.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm curious, though, what are some of the potential downsides if we don't prioritize responsible AI? Like, what are the real risks we're facing?
Well, I think one of the biggest concerns is the potential for AI to perpetuate and even amplify existing biases and inequalities that are already out there.
Mm-hmm.
We've already seen examples of this with things like algorithmic bias, especially in areas like hiring, lending, and even criminal justice system, right?
Right, where AI systems are trained on data that's already biased, and so they end up making these unfair or discriminatory decisions.
Exactly. And if we're not really careful, those biases could easily become embedded in even more powerful AI systems that control these really critical aspects of our lives. Things like access to healthcare and education, employment opportunities, and even our social interactions, which is a little bit scary to think about.
It is a little bit scary, yeah. And beyond those social implications, there's also this concern about AI being used for straight up malicious purposes, right?
Absolutely, yeah. In the wrong hands, AI could be used to develop autonomous weapon systems, right?
Yeah.
Ones that could actually make decisions about life and death without any human intervention at all. Or it could be used to create these super sophisticated surveillance systems that really erode our privacy and basic freedom.
It's a stark reminder that at the end of the day, AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
Totally. And it's not even just about those like malicious actors out there, right? Even with the best of intentions, even when people are trying to do good, AI systems can still have unintended consequences if we're not really careful about how we design and deploy them.
It's like, the spread of misinformation and propaganda that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly, yeah. AI can make it even easier for people to create and spread fake news, deep fakes, all sorts of deceptive content. And as these AI systems get more sophisticated, it's going to be even harder for people to tell the difference between what's real and what's been fabricated.
That is a daunting challenge. But, it's not all doom and gloom, right? I mean, there are people and organizations out there that are really working hard to address these challenges and to make sure that AI is ultimately used for good.
Oh, 100%. There's a growing movement of researchers, developers, policymakers, and ethicists who are really dedicated to responsible AI development. They're working on these really important things like developing ethical guidelines, technical tools, and regulatory frameworks that can help us mitigate the risks of AI and promote its use for good.
Yeah, and I think that's encouraging. I'm also encouraged by the fact that there seems to be this growing awareness and engagement from the public, too. More and more people are asking these really important questions about the implications of AI, and they're demanding that it be developed and deployed responsibly.
Yeah, that's so crucial. Because, like, ultimately, the future of AI depends on us, you know? It depends on the choices that we make and the actions that we take.
It is easy to feel overwhelmed by the complexity of all this stuff, but I think the key takeaway is that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of AI.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
We can stay informed, we can participate in those public dialogues, we can support organizations that are working to promote responsible AI development, and we can hold companies and governments accountable for the decisions that they make.
Yeah, and as consumers, we can choose to support companies that align with our values and advocate for policies that protect our rights and interests in this, increasingly AI-driven world.
It's about recognizing that the future of AI is not some predetermined thing. It's something that we, as a society, have the power to shape.
That's such a good point. And I think on that note of empowerment, it's probably a good time for us to wrap up this deep dive into the world of AI.
It has been such a fascinating conversation.
Uh,
And honestly, I really hope it's given you some new things to think about, some new questions to ponder.
well said. I always say knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about AI and how it's going to impact our lives, the better equipped we'll be to actually navigate all of this as it keeps evolving.
Yeah, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep exploring.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll catch you next time.